'93 election argument that if I don't win, the country's over.
But what he's talking about is this subversion of our economy and the subversion of our democracy, that we will never have an election again. I don't think he's saying that it'll be a bloodbath in terms of a civil war.
Joe Rogan's not some conservative. And by the way, I don't know him. I'm not friends with him. I have anything against him. I don't know him. But you hear Rogan, who's a very nonpartisan guy, calmly explaining to this communist, well, yeah, but that's not really what he was saying, right? And so here he's going through the explanation.
Saying that the economy's going to be destroyed.
But there was no, I was listening for that. I was thinking maybe he meant it as a metaphor. I didn't hear any. I mean, the bloodbath is...
It's an unfortunate term, but he's not, I don't think he's saying it's a civil war.
It sounded to me like he was. It sounded to me like, if he doesn't win, there will be violence.
Right.
You have to really give him a hell of a lot of benefit of the doubt.
The economy. He's talking about he's talking about China building plants. He's talking about all these things and saying that if he doesn't get elected, it's going to be a blood.
We're coming up on the best part where Rogan just plays the full clip, the full context for him. And this is the money part. His response after. He doesn't want to leave the cave.
It's going to be a mess. I don't think he's I think he would elaborate on that if he was saying there'll be violence. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying destruction of our economy, the destruction of our...
he makes a lot of asides. So he was talking about the economy, that's true. And then he said, if I'm not elected, and then he makes an aside about what would happen to the country.
The video we watched cuts it off right after it says bloodbath.
That's it.
Get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing.
Okay, so he's back on the economy.
Yeah, he was talking
but the aside was not about the economy. The aside was him making one of these typical asides about how important he is. All right, Joe, I think we're not going to settle this.
Remember my sky is green theory? This guy, John Haidt, he can look up at the sky, the same sky you're looking up at, maybe right now, and your eyes tell you it's blue. Obviously, you can see it's blue. It's not a mystery. And he should be able to see it's blue. His eyes work. But he looks up and he sees green. The average American Democrat exists in a world that is not real. As I have explained many, many times, we have to start operating as if we're dealing with people who are insane. And this is one of the very few times where I'm genuinely not trying to be insulting. They believe things that are simply not true, and they believe them all the way. No different than the guy who believes he can fly and jumps off of a building. The average American Democrat, because they exist in a world of lies, they consume only lies, they read only lies, they want to believe only lies, they don't want you to save them. They don't want to wake up. Oh yeah, please play it, Chris. It's a great clip. And it actually reminds me of Soviet defector, former KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov. And this clip we've played many, 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 many times for you.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it.
Sound familiar at all? Remind you of the last argument, debate you had with Liberal Aunt Peggy? It's the truth. Hey, Jesse. My son and I were listening to your show yesterday afternoon, and he heard you say "Flamers for Freedom." That one didn't come out the way I had wanted to. Anyway, he said he thought about it for a second and responded with, "I know what that means." Nothing could have prepared me for his response. He said, "It means burning down houses to stop the communists from getting in." I was laughing. He's sick. I have also heard you speaking about the looming financial crisis we're facing. I wanted to ask you to paint a picture of what that might look like. How can we prepare? Thanks for all you do. And it's from Tori. Okay, let's talk about this financial crisis. Let's talk about this just briefly here. BlackRock did something today. They made a move that should be alarming. Home prices are down 20%. That's also alarming. There are some trends that make it seem as if we're facing something pretty rough. And let's talk about that in a moment. Before we talk about that, maybe here